fear is at the root of so much conflict. Naturally, when something is new to us and unknown and we don't have an understanding of it, we feel afraid, threatened by it. And that's why I love what you are doing, which is help educate people around AI, because therein lies the hope. If you do understand it, you understand how it can be a tool for you, you can feel hope about it, you can feel positive about it.
We hear a lot about AI replacing so many jobs, but what about conflict resolution jobs? Can AI actually help us resolve conflict? Today, we're talking to Ashley Virtue of the National Conflict Resolution Center, and we're going to find out what role AI is going to play in the future of large-scale problem solving. And what you're going to find is that it's not so straightforward of how much of this can be automated and what parts of conflict resolution absolutely has to be done by humans. This is going to be a fascinating discussion, and it's going to give you a realistic view of the future of conflict, which last I checked, is not going away. Let's dive in. This episode is sponsored by the Applied AI Association. Get involved at aaiaglobal.com. Ms. Virtue, thank you so much for being on Mind the Machine. As you know, we really try and uncover what it means to be human in an ever-automated world. And a lot of folks have a lot of anxiety about this. And, maybe we just start where how we came to know each other and what we've done just in the last couple of weeks to help lower the fear and raise the knowledge base of what it means to really have great AI. So let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me on. I am delighted to talk about this today. And, I think my line of work is about the most human thing possible because it's all about conflict resolution and communication strategies. The way I like to describe what we do at the National Conflict Resolution Center is if it is any kind of difficult conversation at all, we're in that space. We're in the space of how to have it and how to have it more effectively, how to have it better. So, which is very, very human. And it's fascinating to think about the implications of today's technology and AI specifically in that space. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you about that.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. So the history of national conflict resolution, 1980s established. And what's the story? Who's like, conflict, we got to solve it.
Right.
Let's
Who's
do
it?
it.
I want to spend all day resolving conflict. So National Conflict Resolution Center, which also goes by NCRC, so we can abbreviate a little bit, it was founded in 1983, so over 40 years ago, and actually began as a mediation center, quite focused on the area of mediation, which for anyone who doesn't know exactly what mediation is, it's where a neutral third party comes in to help resolve an issue. And for a long time, that was primarily what the center did. But a new president came in, and that was our current president, Steve Dinkin. And he really had a vision for a lot more national work. At the time, the work had been really kind of regional in mediation. And, I think in his vision was that conflict resolution services aren't just limited to kind of formal alternative dispute resolution. They should be accessible to everyone, even at those informal levels, like managers who are just dealing with employees on an everyday basis, or needing to give constructive feedback and not sure how to do that effectively, or to bystanders who see red flag behavior and don't exactly know what to do because that's awkward, but they want to say something, they want to do something. And so in 2005, we officially became the National Conflict Resolution Center, really opened up our world to a lot more training, working around the country, doing large group facilitated dialogues. And we've always kept mediation as a core service that we do in all kinds of mediation cases. However, our reach is really much bigger because we have these extensive training programs that help people just have those everyday conversations that can be awkward, or tense, or, just a disagreement, and in better ways.
I love it. Well, I guess in my mind, I think, okay, you've taken something that normally was enterprise, business to business level, and you said, world, we all are dealing with conflict. How do we rise or lower to meet the need wherever that need is where conflict? Because, I mean, let's face it, life is hard. And conflict is really almost everywhere in small, medium, and large, and some cases extra large. But, I really love this. And so, just looking back and reflecting on our last conversation was surrounding the anxiety, then fear that folks have around artificial intelligence. And as you and I discussed, Pew Research cited in their most recent study, actually, I think it was end of April, was a high 80% of the population has fear and are overwhelmed, and they're worried. And so when Pew comes up with something like that, I'm like, all right, we really need to be paying attention. And so as Finegood.tech, the producing entity of this book, How to Win Friends
Woo-woo.
and
It's
Influence
so good.
Robots, very much ooh, matches Ashley's shirt. Very much about fear. And this book was written in end of 23 and published in 24. And so we knew from the outset, even the term artificial intelligence incites some fear because we feel like our brains are somehow now being duplicated in a way that maybe we're no longer needed. And so that's where we started our conversation. So I'd, love for you to tell our listening/viewing audience about our last conversation on your webinar.
Yeah, it was absolutely wonderful. And I'll just mention for anyone who wants to see that conversation, you can see it on our webinars page on our website, ncrconline.com. I think one of the best, most interesting things that we talked about, because we talked about, this idea of fear and also this idea of hope, which is your brand, hope in this era of AI. Fear is at the root of so much conflict. Fear is the reason that I think we have so much conflict in the world. And naturally, when something is new to us and unknown and we don't have an understanding of it, we feel afraid, threatened by it. And we don't even know why necessarily. And that's why I love what you are doing, which is help educate people around AI, because therein lies the hope piece, where if you do understand it, you understand how it can be a tool for you, you can feel hope about it. You can feel positive about it. But until then, it is scary. And I admit myself that there are many questions that I have around AI that feel very unknown, especially in the field that I'm in, the field of human-to-human connection, relationship, conflict resolution, where we're tapping into our most emotional places and issues. So, we talked about how fear is at the basis of that and that there has to be kind of an overcoming of fear, really through knowledge building. Also, one of the things I think was so interesting was how we talked about belonging and the lack thereof. And we think about, again, kind of conflict and a lot of what comes up is people feeling like they don't belong. And that can create fear, resentment, bias, that can create a lot of really complicated issues. And, a lot of people don't feel like they belong in the AI world because they don't understand it and they don't know it. And so there's, again, that kind of inherent propensity for conflict and for resistance because of feeling like, well, I don't get it. I don't belong here. This isn't my space. And so I'm going to stay away.
Why? I'm not technical. Yeah. And it's, and I love the conversation through the lens of National Conflict Resolution Center, just outright recognizing there is some conflict surrounding this, right? And especially if people feel like they are somehow irrelevant because technology is advancing. And, as we discussed, technology rarely obsoletes humans. It actually creates more opportunity for humans. It's that initial transition phase where it is, got to give credit where credit is due. That change is important. It is a time to learn new skills and to have stewardship, but to also to ask those hard questions. I think that's what your organization does. Not only answers the hard questions, validates the complex feelings, and then seeks to find resolution. And I gotta tell you, I don't know, that's gotta be some of the best work in the world. I don't know. You must sleep very well at night. The entire organization is probably sleeps very well at
Well, and I think a lot of, again, what we discussed too is just the need for especially workplace leaders to be ahead of this, to acknowledge
Yeah.
that, because, we kind of talked about there's a lot of information out there right now that does show that over the next 1 to 5 years, there's going to be a lot of job loss due to jobs being taken over by AI. And I think that we have to stop sticking our head in the sands that that's not going to happen. And we have to
Yeah.
start talking about, number one, how is that going to look at our company? How is that going to look for my
Right.
team? How is this going to
Right.
help us in some ways? And how are we preparing
Mhm.
for this? And again, this comes down to
Right.
communication and letting people feel heard, right? Talk about maybe some of their anxieties around this, but just being ahead of
Yeah.
it without it being some terrifying thing where all of a sudden, 10% of your workforce has to be laid off. And
Yeah.
everyone feels blindsided by that. We've got to talk about it. We've got to talk about it now.
Yeah, we gotta talk about it now, and I would say too is that the job loss is job
Mhm.
transformation. Yes, there will be outright loss. We know that, in fact, but it doesn't mean loss of opportunity. And the Hope AI Tour is about what habits, H, are you doing daily to create those new opportunities, O, for your purpose, and what experience are you looking to drive to create more
Yeah.
efficiency? There. And so that's the training that findgood.tech does. It's what we all, talk about on the podcast mostly is what skills do you need? What business models are being applied out there? How are folks thinking about these things? And I want to ask you a question, Ashley, on in the history of conflict resolution, and I would say maybe we can even go back to, I don't know, biblical times and think about conflict is has conflict resolution as an art form, has that changed? Like the thinking, because I think, it seems like a timeless truth. Like, would conflict resolution ever change?
It's an amazing question. So conflict has changed. The way we do
Let's go.
conflict has changed. But you are
Yeah, yeah.
so right that there are just these foundational truths about people, that
Hmm.
if there are some basic needs met for people when they are going through an emotional experience, they are much more likely to come out on the other side of it feeling positive about their experience, even if it was difficult
Hmm.
at one point. And one of those
Hmm.
fundamental needs is feeling heard, feeling acknowledged. And that is, you're right. I mean, you could go back centuries, thousands of years to think about the importance of that. So, feeling heard, feeling acknowledged, also going back to belonging, feeling part of a group, feeling like your safety structure of being included in a group is pivotal. And then the other thing is, there's varying words for it, but to some degree, feeling respect, feeling a sense of autonomy, respect, value. And so, I look at
Hmm.
those three things, and you can look at conflicts all the way from like wars in Mesopotamia to social media conflicts and kind of um, see that going on. And so we have to keep those things in mind as we think about
Hmm.
conflict resolution. And again, not even formal conflict resolution, even just daily disagreements, right? We don't see eye to eye on something, we've got to talk it out. Those kind of key areas, if those needs are usually met in some way, then the results really do tend to be so much more positive and long lasting.
Yeah. Yeah, so timeless indeed, and so that's not much hasn't changed there in how conflict arises, how it gets resolved, our best practices towards a good resolution. I mean, sometimes I think about the word resolution, just because it's closed doesn't mean it landed well, right? It's like, but how do we have good resolution or equitable resolution and so forth? And a lot of this, I think about the words trust and truth, and we hear this booted around a lot today. And it's also something that's highlighted and underscored about, gosh, can I really trust these AI systems, which is the root of why there's so much anxiety. And I look at it like this is that it is hard to trust because everyone wants to, companies particularly, want to position their wares as solving problems 100% over marketing using terms like magic. The magic of AI drives me crazy, as you know, Ashley. Like, there is no magic, okay? It's called math. Let's look into it. It's pretty straightforward. Yes, do we understand everything? No, we don't understand everything, but what we do know is that, in fact, many industries are changing, and a lot of them for the good. One industry in particular that I think is interesting, we've talked about the future of conflict resolution, or the history of conflict resolution. I want to talk about the future of conflict resolution. In these systems, one of the number one use cases is chatbots. And chatbots resolve problems, whether they're small airline ticketing problems, assuming you're not stranded somewhere, or whether, whatever the scale of the problem. And the future holds that in one day, conflict might be, these larger scale conflicts could be resolved through agents. I'm wondering what your industry in general, what the thinking is about why that would work and why that wouldn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already seen that chatbots are pretty capable of filling some of those underlying needs that I mentioned previously that usually come up in disagreements. We see it to an extent, even there have been people who've formed relationships, like loving relationships with chatbots. And, as kind of strange as that is, there is kind of a need, right, to feel heard, to feel acknowledged, to feel loved, to feel belonging. That's coming out because they're kind of feeling like they're receiving that from this AI chatbot. So I think we've seen that they are capable of, expressing, I think, some of the things that we as humans need to hear to be pulled along in a conversation. So is it impossible to think that a conflict could be mediated by a chatbot? It's not impossible. I do think there are some things that we'd want to be careful of. There are some things there that I think about a lot that seem uniquely human to me, although this is your space and I would love to hear what you think about it.
Yes.
One of the risks I worry about a little bit is that one of the things a mediator in particular does is constantly work on that idea of being neutral in the conflict and checking their bias. And sometimes, I will be honest, sometimes as a mediator, you go into a situation and you know that person is wrong. You're in there going clearly this person is bad and this person is good. Yeah. But they didn't come to a judge. They didn't come to an arbitrator. They came to a mediator. And the whole purpose of mediation is to empower the individuals in the conflict to take some ownership of the solution, to be part of the solution building. And so if a AI mediator were to go in, I think it would be very easy to go in and say well, clearly you're wrong. And so some bias would show up to guide the agreement or guide the conversation towards the quote unquote right person. And so it's just interesting because there's a need to allow for the individuals themselves to work it out without having an answer delivered.
Yeah, I love this. And this is such a nuance that I hadn't really deeply thought about before, is owning your part of the solution, which is why you do mediation, which means you do have to show up authentically and a bit of falling on your own sword. And these systems, by and large, are programmed to solve problems. And in some ways, I think are pretty unbiased, as they say, garbage in, garbage out. But bottom line is I don't know that inherently, as it exists today, it is what have I done that's wrong here, right? It seems more transactional and externally directed to the environment of what's happening around. Now, that said, these are incredibly flexible, powerful tools that are generating fabulous results as a result of what's being put into them. So maybe that is the opportunity and how we should think about it. But even large platforms like Grok has a utility on their voice app called Not a Therapist. Yeah, little legal disclaimer, but to your point, people are
Yeah.
using these tools not only for self-help and self-reflection, which requires some pretty good measure of self-understanding and ownership. Like, yeah, I do stay on my phone too much, or maybe that ninth cocktail after dinner, maybe I didn't need that. So I think there's some self-reflection, counseling happening in there, but it sounds like it could be a great opportunity for the future, especially where we're just trying to solve problems. And that gets back to my core premise of what this technology truly is. It is a tool, man-made tool, woman-made tool, mankind-made tool, machines made by man, inherently flawed because of that, but at the same time, the tool nonetheless. And so I think that the marriage of opportunity here is, how do we get really good conflict resolvers using their intellect and expertise to drive these systems at scale? Because I think last time I checked, we got way more problems than we got solutions in this one.
Well, and what's interesting is that the potential, that I just mentioned for maybe an issue with AI, not being able to just go in and fix it, and kind of allow for the space for other people to get in there and do the work themselves. That is also a problem that a lot of humans have. We do so much work with managers around the country, and most managers are amazing problem solvers. And so when they have employees, and obviously they're not coming in as like dedicated third-party neutrals, they have a stake in the outcome but we teach a process for them to help their employees kind of resolve issues. And one of the biggest hurdles we have to get over is that managers want to go in and fix it. They want to go in and just be done and like check the box and move on. And I get that because we're all so busy. But again,
Right.
we talk to them about like, you're putting a Band-Aid on and you're fixing that issue for these two employees today, but they're going to have another issue tomorrow, because at the core of this is they need to like show each other more respect and they need to work through that. So, it's not just an AI problem. It's something that we talk to humans about all the time, because there is such a
Right.
tendency to want a quick solution to things, especially these days. And in our line of work, it is a little bit about slowing down, taking a little extra time today to save a bunch of time later.
Right, right. And it's that reflection. I don't see anyone really saying, ChatGPT, can you just reflect and let's create space? And, that's not really happening, right? It is, a fast forward button. But no, that is incredibly interesting and insightful way to look at this. And, this is why I'm loving having you on the show, because as people in communities are building solutions for all types of businesses and business models, you really need to take these values-based, timeless truths into consideration. Isn't all about quick resolution and transaction. It's about, sounds like a lot of the process and healing maybe is happening in this process. Is that where that time comes in, you think,
Yeah, I think
Ashley?
healing is a part of it, and reflection. I think being able to really go to, when you are involved in a conflict, sometimes you have to, kind of experience the grief or the pain that you've experienced, and then you get to another place where you get to say, okay, but what do I really want out of this? And that's where a great mediator or manager or, kind of train can help you, because there's this question where you have this moment where you kind of go like, what do I want? Do I want to like hurt this other person? Do I want to lose my job? Do I want to like move on and be happy? And if I want that, okay, here's what I can do. And that's the self-reflection that usually moves people out of their stuck place, and into a place of, okay, I can acknowledge that was unpleasant. I did not like that. And now what can I do to move forward? And I want to be part of thinking about what that is. So, I think that's a huge part of it. And, as you were just kind of saying that last bit, I was thinking of one other thing that feels really important to conflict resolution and communication. And I don't know how it's going to show up in AI, and I'd love to hear what you think, but that is authenticity. I have been in so many rooms where when, whether it's a party in conflict, like myself, like I'm in conflict with somebody and I'm doing my best to resolve it with them, or I'm trying to, mediate formally or informally. If there's a sense that I'm being inauthentic, um, it ruins the whole thing, like just go home, pack it up, because there's not going to be a resolution. And so that measure of and I think that's why we have so much conflict on social media right now, is everyone is just so brave behind their computer screens and, say things they would never say face to face. And so, that part I think could be a challenge. I'm curious to see how that would play out.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it truly is the challenge. And I think it's the $1 billion question because it is sentiment, trying to code for sentiment analysis and, authenticity means to me, when I think about that term, is that you really saw what I was doing, feeling, experiencing. You empathized with that. You understood. You didn't, you weren't, what's the other, there's empathy and then there's, oh, I forget. It's almost like more of a pity,
Like
but it's not pity.
sympathy.
You went through it. Yeah, like you went with
Mhm.
me. We experienced it together because she's like, wow, Cheryl, I've had, a sister die of cancer, or I've had this, and I understand
Terrible.
how painful, as opposed to put in a quarter and here's your answer,
Right.
right? And so this is that challenge. There is going to be an opportunity for developers and expert in conflict to be able to build systems and architect systems that can actually do that. And I would be totally remiss if I said that anyone, if I thought anyone could do that today. I think that that is the future that we're looking at, is how can you really do that? And I had an interview last week with the CEO of Faro Health, and he was really talking about they built a dashboard for really all types of different automations to plug in. So you kind of have like your Star Trek dashboard of, oh, here's the metrics, here's the financial, here's this. Like we all want that, right? We all want all of our data in this dashboard. But the part that is really core to all of this is, what's the bedside
Mhm.
manner? Oh, yeah, I've had foot surgery before, or I understand how painful that could be. Or, yes, sometimes people have understanding the experience in real time, which is part of that authenticity. And so that is, I think, the last mile in technology. We refer to like whether major deployments is that last mile is in that customer where it's bespoke, it's intimate, and it's valid. And I don't think we're
Mhm.
there yet. And this is going to be the opportunity ahead in collaboration with Ashley, humans. On the heels of the AI Expo conference in Silicon Valley last week, every single company said the same thing. Humans will be in the loop. And so a lot of this mythology that we hear as a dystopian robots taking over, that is not what we're hearing in the industry level conferences, is that the admission that the jobs of the future not only will be understanding how these systems work, but really maintaining them and programming and supporting them for that last mile. And so those are the new jobs that I see.
Mm.
The other thing that I see there too is in cases like medical, the CEO of Faro Health, as he was saying, Cheryl, we do not talk like the rest of the industry about jobs going away. That is not the case. There's so much need for in people in the medical field and in this industry that it's something that's not really said. And so I think we tend to gloss over maybe those really great jobs we dreamed of after graduating from college, and these rarefied jobs, those are going away, knowledge worker jobs, but there's hundreds of jobs that will actually get better and become more safe. So I'm optimistic, and I think probably the challenging, the holy grail of success would be to get to that level of mediation. But honestly, I don't know, Ashley. I'm kind of thinking the humans got this one.
Is that like at the end of each podcast, you do a little tally? Ding, ding.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, now, I will say this is on the back end, every time I go in and do an analysis for a company, we look at what do you want your customer to
Mhm.
experience? And then what do you want your stakeholders, your board members, your CFO to experience? Those are two totally different applications of artificial intelligence. Both have revenue
Sure.
implications. Both require a lot of, diligence. You've got to pass this audit about how you're using your data. So it's not the flip of a switch. Both are going to change the way that we do business. So whether it's on the front of the house, the back of the house, AI absolutely is here to stay. And as long as it's being supported by wonderful humans like yourself, Ashley, and the crew over at National Conflict Resolution Center, then I am very optimistic about the future of the world.
Thank you. Well, I just want to flip that around to you and thank you for the work that you do to just help break down such a seemingly complicated topic. I love when you say it's not magic, it's math. This is explainable. But to someone like me who has not studied this their whole life or even in the last, few years, it's so helpful to just have it broken down in such a helpful way. I love your take of the hopefulness of it and how there's so much opportunity ahead. And it's really, helped me to look at the work that we're doing and think about it more creatively. So I appreciate your work so much.
Yes, likewise. All right. So we have about 3 minutes and then we're going to land this plane. So, Ashley, tell them where they can go and again, just recap what National Conflict Resolution Center does and how you're changing the world.
Well, I would say definitely check out our website, ncrconline.com, and be sure, especially if you're listening to this and you are a professional or a workplace leader, be sure to go to our training services tab and find free resources for workplace leaders, because we have basically curated a collection of free resources. We post new resources every single week, and these are everything from videos, like short 60-second videos that we do, to webinars like the one that I did with Cheryl last week, to downloads. If we come up, like we have something called a code of civil discourse that we have published that is really designed to help guide those contentious town halls and those big public meetings that can go awry. So, just a wealth of hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of different pieces of information, and they're free. So, go there. We exist to help support individuals who are navigating the complexities of today's workplace. And because those are always shifting, we are always producing new material to be there to support. We recognize that some of the methodologies you may have used 5 years ago, on your team are not going to work today or 10 years ago. And so you need some new tools, and we're there to support you with that. So do check those out. I think it's really valuable. And then, of course, there's just all kinds of other services on our website if you want to know more about us and what we do and how we can support you.
Wonderful. Very well said. Well, with that, Miss Virtue, Miss Goodman, Virtue and Goodman.
I'm making our capes as soon as we're done here. Yes.
I love it. It's almost tattoo worthy.
Yeah.
Virtue and good. Loved having you here. And I know the continuation of this conversation will go on. So we're going to get you back on the show. Thank you so much for your time, intelligence, talent, wisdom, and insight. Ashley
Thank you.
Make sure you're subscribed to Mind the Machine podcast, like the video, and leave a comment letting us know what you thought.